What week will Anthony Richardson start for the Indianapolis Colts? What are some of the hottest position battles going into training camp? And what are the Colts going to do at right guard and wide receiver? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined by my colleague and co-host here at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, how was your weekend, man? A great Memorial Day weekend, great weather. Hopefully everybody enjoys some great racing this weekend with the Indy 500, the Coke 600. But how you doing, man? How was your holiday weekend?
It's a lot of fun. Just did some golfing, did some drinking, did some golfing and drinking at the same time.
We love that.
Definitely followed and caught some incredible highlights from the Indy 500. Which, if you didn't see, to those out there that didn't see like the last 5 laps, I'm sure you can find it online. Absolute pandemonium, probably one of the craziest finishes I've ever seen. And then NASCAR had a great race. It was just great racing weekend and nice relaxing weekend. Very excited to answer some questions now about the Colts.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Awesome racing weekend. Hey, listen, if you follow NASCAR, you know the news just came down that Chase Elliott got suspended. We're still supporting the boy. And my comments on the situation is that Denny Hamlin is a hypocrite and a hack, and we're going to move on. But hey, Logan Schmidt is here. Love to see you here, buddy. Noah Compton is here. Good to see you. And Stats Matt, of course, saying Logan finally showed up. I don't think Logan hasn't been in the comments the past couple episodes, so it's good to see him back here. But as Drake mentioned it, tonight it's going to be a little bit of a we don't have a specific topic that we're talking about for the episode tonight. It's all about you guys and the questions that you have surrounding the Indianapolis Colts, whether it is on AR5 Anthony Richardson, whether it's about the Colts in general, specific position battles, coaches, players, the schedule, whatever it is. We're going to talk about it tonight, and we already have some questions from you guys that you sent in earlier. Please feel free to send in questions throughout the evening as well in the chat. And if you want to make sure your question is answered live here on the show, go ahead and throw a super chat in there and we'll definitely be getting to you. But before we do all that, please go ahead and see what that ticker is saying down at the bottom. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that bell so you never miss an episode of when Drake and I are going live. But if you can't catch us live or you want to listen to us in the car driving to work or wherever you are, you can catch us on YouTube as always, but go ahead and catch us also on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts from. Rate, review, subscribe. It really helps us out in the charts and helps us reach other Colts fans that don't quite know about the show. But like I said, tonight it's all about a question and answer Q&A for you guys. All the questions that you have as we wrap up May, heading into June, and less than 2 months away from Colts training camp. It's really hard to fathom that it's actually that close, but it's going to be fun. Another shout out to you crying, say how we doing, boys. Can't wait for September. We cannot either. Inside the Shoe is here as well. So Drake, let's dive right into it here. On our first question, we got this one early this morning, and shout out to Lawrence Stogner at Lawrence Stogner 4. He said, "My biggest concern on offense is right guard. Do you have any insight on the Colts' plans to address competition there?" So Drake, what do you think the Colts are going to do at right guard? Do you think they stay with the group that they have, or could you see them bringing in some other competition from the outside before we get to training camp?
Oh man, that even now, it's not the ridiculous tornado of uncertainty it was last season, constant rotations, but so many different things they could do. I think they're actually evaluating Blake Freeland right now and seeing, maybe this is a guy who, if he's good enough, this might be a wild card answer, but if he's good enough to start at right tackle, do they move Braden Smith in at guard? I don't know if that's really going to happen, but I think more realistic, they do have confidence in Will Fries. I think that they're going to push him, and I think it was Ekiyor from Alabama, was it?
Correct.
The undrafted free agent? Yeah, that's a guy who a lot of people thought was a fourth rounder. You know, a lot of people thought he was definitely going to get drafted, and that's going to be someone who will push him. So I think that it's really going to, I know it's an undrafted free agent we're talking about here, but I would say it's probably going to be one of those two. I wouldn't rule out them still going and signing a cheap veteran right guard that can potentially play multiple positions and maybe be that fill-in guy to at least push either Fries or both of those guys.
Yeah, and I think the Colts are comfortable with the group they have now. Chris Ballard always says that he never stops looking. They're always looking to add competition. But as far as adding like a big name free agent before from now until training camp, I really don't see that happening. I think that what we're going to see is that battle take place between Will Fries and Emil Kior. That's going to be your main competition for the right guard spot. But I really like what you said about Blake Freeland there, because if Will Fries starts to struggle and the Colts aren't confident in some of the interior backups like a Danny Pintor or Emil Kior, Wesley French, whoever is in there on the interior of the offensive line for the Colts, and Blake Freeland is impressing, and if the Colts feel like he can hold his own out there at right tackle, sure. I definitely think it's on the table where we could see Braden Smith move inside to right guard where he played in college, and then Blake Freeland steps in at that right tackle spot. That is certainly on an option for the Indianapolis Colts, and I think it's one that they're going to look at very seriously. That is, if that right guard spot really starts to become a problem.
Well, and to kind of build off of that, this again, we've mentioned this a bunch. They are not going to take this lightly. I mean, it might seem like, hey, they haven't signed somebody. You know, are they doing what they did last year? No, I think they're looking at the talent they've got. I think that they're going to give Will Fries his due chance to try to get that starting position because look, he was the most consistent guy at the right guard
Mhm.
position last year. There's like 4 people that played it. So I think that it's great to see that they're letting him try to at least get that position again. I think if they do sign someone, kind of like you said, it's not going to be someone you're going to go, wow, that's a really awesome player. It's going to be someone who's a veteran. There's been like 3 or 4 of these guys that have been floated around, a couple of them from the AFC South. So I think that's the most realistic. But I think they do have confidence in Fries. They just want to make sure that he's ready.
I would agree. So, what's our next question on the docket here, Drake?
So we got one from the one and only the third host of the show, Stats Matt. He asks, "What do you deem to be a successful year for Anthony Richardson and for Steichen's first year?"
I
Very good
think,
question.
yeah, I think this is a good question because it's really, I think it comes down to managing expectations for Anthony Richardson. If you go into this thinking Anthony Richardson's going to be Andrew Luck from the very beginning, you're sadly mistaken. I think when you look at this and you talk about what we should look at as far as grading Anthony Richardson, I think what we all need to see is just consistent progression throughout the year. I know people love to throw out like stats of what we think he could do, but for me, I really want to see Anthony Richardson really become comfortable in this offense. I want to see him really show command of the offense, and each week just getting a little bit better, really taking over this offense and showing that the Colts can build around Anthony Richardson. So whether that's 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns or whatever, and I'm talking about through the air, but really I just want to see Anthony Richardson consistently get better throughout the year, and it's not going to be on a linear graph. I mean, he's going to have his ups and downs, but you want to see him be able to overcome those downs and not continue to make the same mistake over and over again. And then as far as Shane Steichen is concerned, look, if the Colts go 8-9 this year, I'm going to consider that a success. From where this
Oh
team
yeah.
was at the end of the year, you want to see a different culture, and you really want to see not only the players just fighting to the end, you want to see cohesiveness, and you really just want to see the players really buying into what Shane Steichen's vision is. And I think as we go throughout the year, you're really going to see the Shane Steichen's vision for this team really start to come out.
Yeah, and Steichen is coming. Obviously, it's kind of a big step for him because it's his first head coaching gig with a guy who's pretty raw that he's going to have to develop with a brand new offense around him. So the good news though for Steichen, and I think this would kind of judge a successful year, is the sky or the only way to go is up. All right, for Shane Steichen, like if you get 6-7 wins, that's still progress compared to what you saw. And I would say for Richardson, yeah, my brain wants to go to stats, but it's so difficult with him specifically to know what he's going to do. So I think kind of what you said was perfect. It might be the answer to fall in or to fall back on, but it's really true. If he's progressing week after week, and by if he starts week 1 and by week 14, 15, you're seeing a guy who's completing 61% of his passes, or like maybe the high 50s or something like that, as opposed to the low 50s at the beginning of the season. That right there is success. That's a guy who is hitting his stride. You're not looking for a Super Bowl here. You're not looking for maybe even a playoff contention. If that happens, great. That's a little cherry on top. You're looking for progress. It's all about getting the offense synced together because they're all so young. Brand new coach, brand new coordinator, brand new quarterback.
I think that's why I'm so excited for my film review series this year, documenting Anthony Richardson every single game, so you can kind of go back and look at the different things throughout as the season goes along and see how he is improving. So I think that's going to be vital to the success for this team. And if you see Anthony Richardson getting better each and every week, you got to feel good as a Colts fan. So our next question is from Brandon Moses, my former co-host of Colts podcast. Shout out to Brandon. Brandon asked the over/under on what week Anthony Richardson starts for the Indianapolis Colts. So Drake, let's just do it right now. Our very early end of May predictions on when Anthony Richardson will be the starting quarterback for the Colts.
Man, week 1.
Week 1?
I'm going with week 1. I think you got to throw him out there, man. I mean, you got to get the reps. He didn't have the experience in college. We talked about this. It's so weird. And Patrick Mahomes is a perfect example. He had started for 2 or 3 years, then sat behind Alex Smith, a playoff contending team, by the way, and Andy Reid, then got thrown in. He could afford to sit. Richardson doesn't have that kind of experience to sit. He needs to get out there early. I think that Steichen wants him out there too. So I'm going week 1.
Okay. I like it. I think I'm going to go week 4. I'm going to put the over under at 3.5 because I think by week 4 we see Anthony Richardson out there on the field, and it very well could be sooner than that. But I think getting a couple weeks into the regular season under the Colts belt, I think we could even see the amount of snaps Anthony Richardson is taking in these games ramp up each week till we get to week 4. And then it's like, okay, this dude is ready to take over. But I think that honestly, if things keep progressing how they are right now, it would not shock me to see Anthony Richardson start week 1 for the Colts, like you said, Drake.
Well, and that would be huge because you're getting him out there against a team that just won the freaking division. Okay. You're throwing him. It could, everyone's talked about, well, you don't want to throw him out there too soon where you snap his confidence. Look, they are not going to throw him out there if they do not think he is ready. Anything could happen, of course, but they're not going to be like, we're 90% sure he needs to go out there. They're going to be absolutely sure. And if they don't think he's ready, I could definitely see week 4 or 5 being when he finally gets that start.
Perfect.
Okay, so the next one is also from the one and only Brandon Moses, and he asked, how do you guys feel about the Colts wide receiver unit right now? Ooh.
I might be on an island with this, or at least I might be going against the grain, but I'm perfectly fine with the Colts wide receiver group, and here's why. I mean, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is a very solid, very good wide receiver. I will debate anybody on that. So I think the Colts are fine in that area. I think Shane Steichen has a lot of plans for Michael Pittman Jr. in this offense to kind of be that A.J. Brown type role that the Eagles had last year. I think Alec Pierce is definitely going to make a jump from year 1 to year 2. Typically that we see that with wide receivers. And then especially with Anthony Richardson's skill set, being able to line up with what Alec Pierce does best. And that's go track a deep ball. So it's gonna be very. I think Alec Pierce is gonna shock a lot of people this year. And then I think the battle for that slot position between Josh Downs and Isaiah McKenzie is going to be very, very interesting, especially because if Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs are creating such a really good connection early, that could be the difference. If Anthony Richardson is able to link up with Josh Downs a lot quicker. Josh Downs is also someone that can win very quickly off the line of scrimmage, kind of like we saw Devontae Smith do with the Eagles last year in Shane Steichen's offense. Now, I'm not comparing the two wide receivers at all because Devontae Smith is a freak. I think he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. But the way Josh Downs can fit within this offense, I think is going to be very solid. And then as far as Isaiah McKenzie is concerned, you could put him in the slot. You could also put him in the backfield. But we talked to Isaiah McKenzie a while back. I mean, he told us that he could be placed really all over the offense. And so I really like the top four. Depth is where I'm a little bit concerned. Yes, you have Ashton Dulin there. I do think Ashton Dulin can play any one of the wide receiver positions in this offense in a pinch. But then you're looking at guys like Mike Strachan and then undrafted guy Xavier Scott. The depth really isn't there. So if one or two of these guys goes down, it could really spell problems for this team. But as far as the top end wide receivers of this group, I'm excited to see what they can do, especially with a quarterback, if they're able to work with this quarterback for not only this year, but get some continuity with him instead of just changing quarterbacks year after year.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I love the take on the starters, but then the depth is the concern. I think that is still a little bit of a concern, but you got to think. I mean, Michael Pittman is going into, I believe, let's see, he had Rivers, then he had Wentz, then he had three other quarterbacks, so that's five quarterbacks for him. This will be his sixth. Alec Pierce is going into his sophomore season. This will now be his fourth starting quarterback, and Josh Downs is going to be getting thrown the football by a rookie. Right. All of these guys are kind of getting finally some consistency, and it's all new while also being kind of raw and fresh and good for everybody. So I really like Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce in this offense, the vertical shots, making big plays. I love the idea of Josh Downs getting I think Zach Hicks made a pretty awesome prediction. He said a bold prediction, but he said there's a chance he wouldn't even be surprised if the volume leads him to lead the team in catches. He jokingly said it probably won't happen, but you just never know. He might be a safety blanket for Anthony Richardson. And Isaiah McKenzie is very interesting because if he can also connect with Anthony Richardson, you could have two serious problems at the slot on each side when it's empty sets and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm really intrigued though to see. I know that he's more of a special teamer, but I do like Ashton Dulin with Shane Steichen. I know that he's a big play type of guy. And he, like Jake Arthur said, he makes the most ridiculously difficult looking catches, but he makes the catches. So it could be a really awesome wide receiver core. Now, again, if one of these guys does happen to tweak something, I would like to see them maybe sign a cheaper free agent or two potentially in the off season before the regular season, just to make sure that roster and depth, is good to go in case someone gets hurt.
Stats Matt said, imagine Pierce having Pittman with a quarterback that can throw for longer than 20 yards. Well, we're going to get to see it this year. Brandon Moses is here in the chat as well, finally able to catch us live, so it's good to see you, buddy. We already answered your questions, so if you missed those, definitely go back and listen to it, so that way you can hear our answers. But our next question is from the one and only Logan Schmidt at Scotty Colt. I think since you're from Wisconsin, is it Scotty Colt? Hopefully I'm pronouncing your at right. But Logan asked, do you guys think Shaq Leonard will be fully ready to play week 1? And do you think he can return to 100%? This is tough. Tough. Drake, what are your thoughts on Shaq Leonard heading into the season?
Sorry about the dog out there.
Oh, sorry.
I really like his chances to be back to 100%. Maybe if not week 1, potentially like maybe after a couple of weeks or something like that. It's a nerve issue. It's a nerve back issue. So it's caused issues with other parts of his body stemming from that bundle of nerves in the lower part of his back. So it's a very touchy type of injury. But man, I really like Shaq Leonard's tenacity. I like his competitiveness. He gets motivated by negative energy, which is an interesting thing, but it works out well for the Indianapolis Colts when he's on the field. So, you know what? Hell, I'll go with it. I think that he's going to be back to 100%. I think that his word is gold for the Colts. And I mean, that's really, you're getting the source, or you're getting the information from the source, and he's not going to lie to these guys. He's going to tell them, I'm not ready. I am ready. But I think he's going to get back to 100%. I do.
I think the biggest factor in all this, and how you can tell that the Colts are confident that Shaq Leonard can get back to what he was, is how they handled everything this offseason, especially with the linebacker room. The only linebacker that they really did anything with was they brought back EJ Speed. And so if you have feelings, or you think that Shaquille Leonard is not going to be able to come back and be the player that he was, you're going to fork out the money for Bobby Okafor for him to stay, because Bobby Okafor was arguably your best linebacker last year. With both him and Zaire Franklin had incredible seasons. So when you're looking at it in that space, I think the Colts believe Shaquille Leonard will be back to 100%. And just hearing everything that has come out of from Shaq Leonard, from the Colts, this is really all we have to go off on too, is that second surgery really did the trick, and everything is continuing to fire. It's all about just getting strength back into the lower part of his body and making sure that he can be that player that he once was. Do I think he's going to be ready to play week 1? I would probably lean on the side of yes. Do I think he's 100% by week 1? Probably not. If I'm being honest, I think by the time it's going to take him a little bit, because remember, he hasn't played football in almost a year now. So
Yep.
when you're talking about him getting back 100%, I do think it's going to take some time, and he's going to need to get his legs underneath him. So I think after about, maybe you're seeing 3 to 4 games, then I think you will see a 100% Shaq Leonard who's out there ready to go, and we're going to see the Shaq Leonard of old. As Stats Matt says, he doesn't even have to be 100%, just be a top 10 linebacker, not a top 2. And I think he could get back to that top 2 linebacker in the game. Again, this season, I think the motto for the season is just going to be patience. Patience with Anthony Richardson, patience with Shane Steichen in this offense, patience with Shaq Leonard. It's really, I mean, it's not a full-on rebuild, but this is a soft rebuild. The Colts are retooling everything. So you just want to be patient, kind of see how the season goes along.
Well, and kind of going back to what Stats Matt said, is this is a guy who is arguably, maybe not even arguably, maybe he just is the most dynamic linebacker out there when it comes to taking away the ball. He will punch it out, he'll put it on the dirt, he will make every single tackle. As soon as he makes contact with someone, the guy's on the ground, he'll take the ball away through the air by picking it off. I mean, this is just a guy who will make you think twice, and that usually is all you need to get a sack. That's all you need to get a strip sack or a fumble or something like that. He doesn't even have to make the play to make a play happen for the defense. He just has to be out there. So, missed him last year. So just as long as he's out there week 1, even if it's 85, 90%, like you said, I do think he'll be back to 100% by week 4 or 5.
We're all ready to see a healthy Shaquille Leonard back out there in that number 53 jersey. So what's our next question, Drake?
All right. So we have Nick Z, who everybody knows who Nick Z is, but he has a really good question here, and I'm actually going to use Noah Compton and his stats that he so graciously provided for Colts rookie QB season records here to answer this question. Nick Z asks, which rookie Colts QB record do you think Anthony Richardson breaks, and what do you think it's going to like? What do you think the numbers will be? So that's a really interesting question, because we got passing yards was Andrew Luck, passing touchdowns was Peyton Manning, completion percentage was Manning, interceptions was Manning, rushing yards and rushing TDs were both Andrew Luck. Now, obviously, I don't want to bore everyone to tears with the specific numbers, but if I'm guessing, I would say both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns are going to, without question, I think he's going to potentially even shatter both those.
Yeah, I think rushing yards, it's got to be with Andrew Luck. It was probably close to 300 to something.
255 is what Noah had.
255, and then I think as a rookie, Andrew Luck had 5 rushing touchdowns, something to that effect too. Oh yeah, I think Anthony Richardson. I think we're probably looking at it close to 500 yards rushing with Anthony Richardson. So I do think he can double that, and I'm going to go higher on the rushing touchdowns as well. I think that he's going to get probably I say close to 7 or 8 touchdowns on the ground. Now, when you're talking about completion percentage, yards, and all of that, it really just kind of yards. I think it just depends on how long he's out there. You know, does he if he starts from week 1, then I think he has a good chance to break it. But otherwise, I don't think. I just don't think there's going to be enough time. Plus, I don't necessarily think the Colts are going to go air crazy and try to air it out. They're going to try to get him comfortable in this situation and in this offense. But yeah, I think I think everybody else would agree with this. But both of those rushing records, rushing Colts rookie quarterback rushing records, yards and touchdowns, very much in danger of being broken by Anthony Richardson. And we've got a couple people in the chat. Chad is here. Good to see you, bud. Anthony Richardson going for 600 yards and 11 touchdowns. That if he could do that and be solid as a passer, then you're looking at offensive rookie of the year category. Stats Matt goes even farther. He says, I'm thinking 700 yards plus if he starts week 1. So yeah, I think those rushing records are in big jeopardy of taking a fall with Anthony Richardson this year. Stats Matt had another question earlier. He said, what do you think will be the hottest position battles in training camp? Drake, what position battles do you have your eye on as the Colts start camp up in late July?
You know, oh man, I think that right guard position, I think that's huge. I think that's a big one right there. They're definitely, I think it's between Akiyor and Fries right now. If they bring in a veteran, that's definitely going to put a wrench in the plans of Akiyor and Fries, because the veteran might not be on the trajectory that one of those two would be, but he's going to be better than both of them probably. So it's like that's going to be an interesting one. I think Logan even asked something to this in the chat, but I think safety could be interesting now that you have a couple. Now you have Scott from California. He's been drafted, so you've got a couple of really interesting players there. And then another one I'll go with is who's going to get that wide receiver 3 spot? Is it going to be Isaiah McKenzie or is it going to be Josh Downs? That's my favorite one. That's probably because they're both very similar in the way that they play, their sizes. One's a veteran, one's a rookie, so I really like that one. I would side with Josh Downs, might win that one out, but those are just 3. There's going to be multiple others, even corner. I'm sure that the cornerback 3 position, that's probably one to watch too.
Going to give a special shout out to Patrick. Patrick Y here. He says the show can start now because it looks like Patrick is here. Hey, always appreciate the super chat, buddy, and your support. You're an absolute legend. Thanks for joining us. But I think I've got a couple, but number one on my list has got to be tight end because you're talking about just an absolute stacked room. I mean, the guys from last year are Mo Alley Cox, Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson. Drew Ogletree was on his way to getting a lot of playing time before he tore his ACL in the preseason and in training camp. Then you bring in Pharaoh Brown. You draft Will Mallory. You sign Caden Smith from the New York Giants, who last played with the New York Giants, I should say. That tight end room, that's going to be just an absolute dogfight throughout the preseason, throughout training camp. It really gets it's going to be interesting to see not only which tight ends we can see excel, but how the Colts use these tight ends as well. Do we see Jelani Woods playing more inline tight end to become that full all-around tight end 1, or is he still used more in receiving packages? Kylan Granson, I mean, we love to talk about how Kylan Granson is a good player, but I was even telling Drake this last week. Kylan Granson, this is year 3, still no touchdowns for Kylan Granson in his career. So when is Kylan Granson going to take off? Because you got a player that's very similar to Kylan Granson in Will Mallory going to be nipping at his heels. Mo Alley Cox, I mean, it's put up or shut up for Mo Alley Cox. Are you going to have another year of subpar play, or are you going to live up to that 3-year, $18 million contract that you signed over a season ago? So it's really going to be interesting to watch that tight end position and what Shane Steichen has planned for each one of these guys, because I think once we get into training camp, we're obviously going to see what the Colts are thinking with all of these guys, and how each one of them is really going to be used in this new Colts offense. But tight end, you already said wide receiver 3, Drake. That's going to be fun watching Josh Downs and Isaiah McKenzie go back and forth all season, really.
Oh yeah.
I think cornerback could be one of them, because you're talking about Dallas Flowers is still there, Darius Rush. Obviously, a lot of people think Juju Brents is going to be that other starter, which I think he will be as well. And then finally, for me, safety. I mean, because you have Rodney Thomas II, who had a really good year. Julian Blackman is in a contract year, but both of those guys play more of a free safety type position. And then there's the guy that the Colts traded up for last year, Nick Cross, who we all had such high hopes for, didn't really pan out last year. Thankfully, because since Rodney McLeod had such a really good year, the Colts didn't really need Nick Cross, but that was like a redshirt year for him. Now it's year 2. Either you got to go start to prove it and get on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, and if Nick Cross can take one of those starting spots away from Blackman and Rodney Thomas, or is it going to be more of a 3 safety rotation, or does Nick Cross even make the rotation? So it's all going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the tight end position, because obviously that's I mean, right here, Jelani Woods is behind me here. I got that jersey for a reason. I'm excited to see this guy at tight end. I think he's got that that tight end 1 on lock. But man, who's going to be tight end 2? Is it going to be Mo Alley Cox or Drew Ogletree or Kylan Granson? I mean, what's Will Mallory going to do? Then you've even got Caden Smith and Pharaoh Brown. Which one of those 2 guys is going to make the team? So it's like there's a lot going on just in that position group. But everything we just ran down, there's legitimate competition. And sometimes with some of these, you don't even know who's going to start. So that'll definitely be a lot of fun. Another one from Stats Matt, which we discussed this, but I'd like to try to throw some Vegas odds on this one. What are the odds that Anthony Richardson wins Offensive Rookie of the Year?
This one's fun. I think it's contingent on if Anthony Richardson starts from week 1. So let's just say Anthony Richardson starts week 1 and can start all year. I'd probably give him the 3rd best odds to win. I would say if I pick the top 3, I would say Bryce Young is probably number 1. I would put Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas, who was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. I'd put Bijan Robinson at number 2, and then I would put Anthony Richardson at number 3. And I don't think the gap between those is as far as you might think. I think if Anthony Richardson can really hit the ground running in week 1, and the Colts can build an offense centered around Anthony Richardson and what he does best, I think the rushing numbers alone could vault him into that conversation. And then it's just all about how can he develop and really attack as a passer, which I don't think, again, he's as far away as a lot of people think. So I'm going to put him 3rd in the rookie class, like I said, behind Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson. But I think it's going to be a very close race between those 3.
I like that, because Bryce Young is obviously the one who sticks out the most, just because he's the most pro ready, and Bijan Robinson is going to take over that backfield, an incredible talent at running back, and they're going to lean on him probably right out of the gate. But here's the thing. Bryce Young doesn't scramble. He's not going to be running the ball a lot, and Bijan Robinson doesn't throw it. Anthony Richardson does both of those things. So if he starts week 1 and he can hit the ground running, he's already got an advantage to win Rookie of the Year. So I think he's got some pretty decent odds. And like you said, I mean, I'd put him there at number 3 if he just kind of is doing okay to start out. But man, if he hits the ground running, I'd say that the odds could go from number 3 to pretty damn good.
And
actually.
there's a lot of buzz around Anthony Richardson too, not
So
just from
much.
local media, but the national media is starting to really pick up on Anthony Richardson, and that could help his case certainly if the whole country starts paying attention to what Anthony Richardson is doing in Indianapolis and he starts to take off. That could bode well for his case for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Colts fan Cole with this question. He asks, how important is teammate bonding off the field, given how we saw a lot of teammates at the Indianapolis 500 this weekend?
Great
And
question.
Drake, I honestly, I'm gonna let you go first, but it's huge. It really is huge for this team to bond off the field.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you saw some sophomore, or some guys that have had a year in the NFL and whatnot. But you saw Darius Rush, you saw Juju Brents, you saw plenty of young talent and rookies just connecting at the 500. It's one of the biggest spectacles in the entire world, and now you're talking about it being huge for the Indianapolis community, which these guys want to get. Again, sorry for the dog. These guys want to get involved in this community right away. And what better way to do it than to go to one of the biggest spectacles that this state can possibly host outside of a Colts game? So I think it's everything. I think that's how you get to know your teammates. And the more you're around them, the better you know them, the easier it's going to be to have success on the field quicker.
Right. And we've heard players talk about this. I mean, we've heard Quentin Nelson say that the offensive line needs to be better at communicating and just hanging out off the field because it creates that bond. And when you're talking about a full unit such as the offensive line, where if one person is out of sync or you don't know what the person next to you is going to do, it can blow up the entire play. And I already mentioned our conversation with Isaiah McKenzie, but I'm going to go back to it again. And if you guys haven't listened to that interview, please go check it out on the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel because it was one of the best interviews that I've ever been a part of in my entire career covering this team. And Isaiah McKenzie really opened up when we talked about bonding and what it means to have a tight locker room. Isaiah McKenzie went off for a 10-minute rant about how important the locker room is and how important it is to have a close-knit team. This isn't fantasy football where you can just plug and play got a bunch of different guys and expect it to go well depending on their ability. No, you have to have guys that really think alike, that can bond off the field, be close in that locker room, basically be like brothers because they're with each other all day, every day, from the end of July till whenever this ride ends, whether it's January or February. So they've got to become close and they have to be a tight knit team that likes each other and likes to play for one another if they want any success of going deep into a playoff run. And I think we've seen that over the past few years, and we've certainly seen it with this Colts team and then the culture they try to build of just being a really close knit team, so that way they get to not only get to know each other personally better, but so it helps them on the field as well.
Yeah, and you're again, we said it earlier, you're dealing with an entirely new coach, new staff, new offense, new everything almost. So these new pieces, these rookies, they need to get to know the community. They need to get to know the people that are their fans. They need to be able to get to know the feel of what it's like to be in Indianapolis. And of course, the most important part is, like you said, you don't want to have dissension in the locker room week one. Good Lord, there's nothing worse. I mean, I'm telling you, that could just destroy everything. You could have all of the pieces on paper to have a successful season and get 8, 9, 10 wins. But if that locker room is broken, you're not going to get anywhere. So they're doing the right things. They're checking all the boxes. They're getting to know each other very well. And I think it is going to bode very well for them, come the regular season. And maybe at the end of the year, we're talking about 8 or 9 wins.
Stats Matt says, listen to how McAfee and other former players talk. Only successful teams they have been a part of were tight in the locker room and outside the locker room. Very good
Yeah,
point, Stats Matt.
absolutely. Okay, so we got one more that was on Twitter. It is from Taryn Knosp, who's a big fan of the show. He says, "How will the linebacker room fare this season?" So we're talking about everyone from Shaq Leonard all the way down to I would say I can't even remember his name, who was drafted out of Wagner. He might even be a linebacker.
Titus Leo. He's defensive end.
Okay.
But honestly, I feel confident still with this linebacker group. Yes, I know the Colts lost Bobby Okafor, but if Shaquille Leonard could come back to 100%, and again, that's a big if. It really rides on how Shaq Leonard can come back. But if he does and he's able to be the Shaq Leonard of old, I think this linebacker group is fine. I mean, you already got Zaire Franklin, who literally broke the franchise record in tackles a season ago. EJ Speed, I think it's time. The Colts have seen what he can do when he gets more defensive snaps. It seems like he can handle that. The Colts paid him as much, and he's going to be that third linebacker when he'll probably come out when the Colts go to nickel or to dime. But when the Colts are in their base 4-3, EJ Speed is going to be out there with Shaq Leonard and Zaire Franklin and be the first one to come in if either one of those guys goes down. So when you're talking about how that core three group of linebackers, I really think it's fine. And then Jojo Doman is there. I know the Colts are high on him. We'll see if any of the undrafted free agent rookie linebackers can make the squad and kind of come out of nowhere. Haven't really had a chance to really dive into what they can bring to the table quite yet, but I honestly think that the Colts are fine at linebacker, and I think if Shaquille Leonard could come back, that's just going to kind of reassure everything. But even if he doesn't this year, I think when you have a linebacker group of Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, you can be fine for 1 year. However, if Leonard does not come back 100% this year, then you probably need to look at either moving on or really adding another piece to that linebacker group.
Yeah, and to answer that question from Taryn, it's just like you said, it's all hinging really on Shaq Leonard. Now, that's not discounting EJ Speed's potential. That is definitely not discounting Ziggy. I mean, my goodness, that dude played out of his freaking mind on a team that just didn't really have any consistency. So I think that alone is reason to be okay with what's going on. Like you said, though, if he is even 85, 90%, week 1, even by week 4 or 5, you've got a seriously talented linebacker core. And then you pair that with what they've got for a defensive front. That's going to help the linebacking core. So I would say it's in good hands right now. And it's even going to be better if Shaq Leonard can get out there week 1.
Right. I would agree. Let's go through the chat and let's grab some questions that are in here. This one is from You Crying. He said, I've got a question nobody is talking about. And this is kind of what we already touched on, but do you guys think we will notice the loss of Okafor this year? And I think it's interesting because I think that they'll notice it. I think just a little bit, just because I think Okafor was a good player. He was good in coverage. He was their best coverage linebacker. But do I think it's the end all be all that Bobby Okafor is not back with this team? No, I do not. Again, you can't pay everybody, especially at a position like off-ball linebacker. You don't want a bunch of your cap going into the off-ball linebacker position. They've already got Zaire Franklin there. Obviously, the team, like I said, thinks Shaquille Leonard is going to be fine and come back and be his normal self. So I think they might notice it here and there on certain plays, but I don't think it's going to be a loss that cripples the defense.
Yeah, and I think that with guys like EJ Speed and then with Zaire Franklin, and he's going to need to obviously connect with Shaq Leonard if he's out there right away. I think you'll notice it maybe early on, here and there, kind of like you said. But I think as the season goes along, the more that those two, however you want to say it, play together, I think you'll notice it less. I really do. I think that you're going to start to see more continuity. They're going to be communicating and talking pre-play with each other, and they're going to be doing a lot better. So I think that if you're going to notice a difference, it's probably going to be more at the front of the season.
Logan asks, who's starting at safety right now? Right now, it's Julian Blackmon and Rodney Thomas II. Those are the two guys that during OTAs, when the Colts go there, their starting defense, those are the two guys at safety. Nick Cross hasn't gotten into that starting lineup yet, and I think if Nick Cross wants to do that, he's just going to have to prove it on the field. And I'm not talking just in practice. I'm talking about in the games. Preseason is going to be crucial for Nick Cross. And then when he gets his opportunity on the field in the regular season, again, he's got to crush it if he wants to enter that lineup. But Rodney Thomas II led the team in interceptions last year. Julian Blackmon, he's going into his 4th year, and he's done it for a while now. He's in a contract year as well. So he's going to be looking to really go out and show he's either worth a second contract or go try to impress other teams once he hits the open market. But right now, Julian Blackmon, Rodney Thomas II. Drake, I'm going to ask you, who do you think ends up as the starters when the season begins? Do you think that stays the same, or do you think Nick Cross enters that conversation?
I think Nick Cross is honestly the one who's on the outside looking in this exact moment. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Julian Blackmon has the most to lose right now. I think that he's got to prove that he is the starter, or else if Nick Cross starts to show flashes, they're going to be like, okay, this is a guy who's super duper young, and this is really his rookie season. So you might see him start, but I do think it's going to be Rodney Thomas and Rodney Thomas and Julian Blackmon. Now, also you got Daniel Scott. He's also kind of hanging around there, and this is a dude who's not really being talked about. I promise you, they picked him for a reason. This is an athletic freak who has a lot of tendencies to make big plays. So that's another name to be looking out for. But I think Blackmon and Rodney Thomas.
Inside the shoe, Drake, you can go first on this one. He asks, who do you see starting at cornerback? What's the first 3 to 4, and then what are your thoughts overall on the cornerback room?
So I think the first 3 to 4, I think just to kind of say Kenny Moore II, I'd say Isaiah Rodgers Sr., I'd say Juju Brents, and then I'm going to go. That's a tough one. I'm going to go Darius Rush. I think that was one of my favorite picks when they picked him. I couldn't believe he fell a couple rounds. I think that guy's got a lot of potential to shore up that 4th spot. Overall, kind of like we discussed earlier, I love the front of it. It's kind of like the wide receiver room. We love the front. We love the guys that are in the showcase. But then the reserves, it's a little bit more concerning. But again, it's guys like Dallas Flowers who are looking to make a name for themselves. So, actually, they also had drafted in the 7th round.
Jalen
Jones from Texas A&M. That's another guy to look for. I mean, I'm pretty excited about the cornerback room. I think they might need one more guy, not a big free agent, just to kind of provide some veteran leadership. But I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think when they're in their base defense, you're going to see Brents on one side, Moore on the other. When they go to the nickel, Moore will obviously move inside to the slot, and you'll have Isaiah Rodgers Sr. as that other cornerback on the outside. 4, I'm going to say to start the season, it's going to be Dallas Flowers, because the Colts like him a lot more than people realize, and it's going to be an actual competition with Dallas Flowers. They're not ruling him out as the one starting as a starting cornerback. And I'll put Darius Rush at 5 for now, but Darius Rush is the type of guy that just how athletic he is and the type of plays that he makes. He's kind of a ball hawk, and we already talked about it, that he's taken a pick 6 back this week or last week from Sam Ehlinger. So Darius Rush, I don't think will be down for very long, and we could see him start to really climb the depth chart as the season goes along. So let's see if we can find another question here. This one is from Keon. Keon Andrews asks, do you guys think that Will Mallory will make the team? And Drake, I'm calling it now. Will Mallory makes the team for the Indianapolis Colts. In my way too early roster prediction, I said the Colts would keep 5 tight ends on the opening roster, and I think Will Mallory is one of them. The pick surprised me a little bit, but he does remind me of kind of like a Kylan Granson, purely receiving tight end at this point. But I think that Shane Steichen and this Colts team really think highly of Will Mallory, and I think he's going to have a spot on this team.
Well, and you got to think of what Shane Steichen was able to do with Hunter Henry and with the Chargers, and then what he was able to do with Dallas Goedert. And they picked him for a reason. Again, this was the fastest tight end in the entire draft. Okay, this is a guy who is going to roast. He's going to roast linebackers, and he's going to be too large for defensive backs to cover. So look for him to, first off, yes, he's going to make the team. I think he's absolutely going to make the team. And I think that he's going to surprise some people. I think Shane Steichen's got some plans for Will Mallory to be a featured part of certain plays of the offense. I'm very intrigued to see what they do with him. They're going to be moving that dude all over the field, maybe even to the outside on some red zone plays.
Right. Harpoon, good to see you. Harpoon Bakery says Okereke counts $5 million against the Giants cap this year. Would that amount have hurt the Colts? The Colts have enough cap space to absorb $5 million,
of course,
but I just think it comes back to roster construction. Harpoon. I think because you also, it can't just be this year. You got to think about who the Colts are going to be re-signing. You have Jonathan Taylor, who needs a big contract. Michael Pittman Jr., who's going to command a big contract. Some other guys that are on expiring contracts, or this year's a contract year. Julian Blackman, we'll see if the Colts bring him back. Isaiah Rodgers Sr., if he has a good year, do the Colts consider bringing him back? So and that's Grover Stewart. I think it might be on a contract year. There's multiple guys that are on a contract year that you're probably going to have to pay again here soon. And when you already have someone step up like Zaire Franklin did last year, you saw the continued improvement of EJ Speed, and the Colts fully believing already that Shaq Leonard is going to be back next season. Okereke was just the odd man out. I thought that Okereke was going to get a bigger contract than he did, but still you can't put so much money into non-premium positions in today's NFL, like off-ball linebacker. They did that already with Shaq Leonard and made him the highest paid linebacker in the NFL for a short amount of time, but he's still in the top 5. You can't just keep paying linebackers when there's more premium positions and better talents like a Jonathan Taylor that are going to need that money. And you want to be able to keep your roster flexible as you head on down the road, basically.
Yeah, and obviously Okereke's contract wouldn't have hurt the Colts per se, but like Andrew said, you had other positions you have to fill. You have contract extensions with superstars that support your offense. Literally, they're like pillars, like Taylor, Pittman. That's the running game and the receiving game right there. You got to figure out a way to pay those guys. So kind of like Andrew said, he was just the odd man out. It's not that they wanted him to go. Okay, they didn't want him to go. He played out of his mind. He had a career year. But to answer your question, Harpoon, yeah, I don't think it would have hurt the Colts, but it makes sense given what they want to do long term with some of these other players.
Man, if you guys want a show outside of this show, it's Patrick Rye in the comments. That dude is just an absolute menace to society. And some of these comments, I love it. I love it. So Patrick, you're always one of the best commenters in the chat. Really appreciate it. Toby asked, good to see you, Toby. He asked, what about the wide receiver competition? We already talked about wide receivers, so you can kind of go back and listen to our full breakdown. I'll just say that I think the Colts will keep 6 wide receivers, and my 6 are Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. Those are the 3 that I think will be the starters. Then there's Isaiah McKenzie, Ashton Doolin, and Mike Strawn. I think those will be the 6 wide receivers the Colts keep. What about you, Drake?
I like those 6, and that's a name we haven't even heard in this episode, is Mike Strawn. We've been talking about prove it. You need to go out there and show us something. We've talked about that for multiple players. Well, that's another one that exact statement applies to. It's like, it's about time for Michael Strawn to show his skills with an offensive mind like Shane Steichen. I think it fits his skill set really well. We'll see.
Okay, we'll do a couple more here, and then we'll let you guys get on with your Tuesday evening. Did want to shout out Culture Shock. It was good seeing you at the draft, my friend. Be free, Okereke. Be free is his comment. But these final 2 questions kind of go together. They're from Logan and Keon. Logan asks, which running backs make the team, and who ends up at number 2? And then Keon asks another one about the running back position. What is your guys' thoughts on Evan Hall, and do you think he will get some playing time this year? So Drake, let's answer Logan's question first. Which running backs make the team, and who ends up at number 2?
I think they're going to go 4 running backs at the least. I would just for this question, I'll say 4. I think it's going to be obviously Taylor, and then Jackson, Moss, and Hull. I think number 2. Boy, that's a lot harder when it's not who's the lead running back, because that's easy. Man, I'm going to go wild card. I'm going to say it's Deion Jackson. I'm going to say that because I think that he has more to offer than Zach Moss, and I think he's more experienced than Evan Hall. So I think if you're talking about the odd man out, if they were to keep 3, it'd be Zach Moss. That's my hot take.
Yeah, I agree with their 4: Taylor, Moss, Hull, and Jackson, but I think RB2 is going to be Zach Moss. I think for what he proved last year to end the year, taking over for Jonathan Taylor, that's really going to stick with this coaching staff. And I think you don't have to change things up as much because it's a similar skill set Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. So I think he kind of really fits in there as that running back number 2. And then as far as Keon's question is concerned, thoughts on Evan Hall, and do you think he'll get some playing time this season? Absolutely, I do. I think Evan Hall is going to be that third down running back for the Indianapolis Colts. And what I mean by that is he's going to be the primary pass catching running back. He was probably behind Bijan Robinson, who could probably play wide receiver. He's that talented. Evan Hall was the best receiving back in this draft class, and he's a guy out of Northwestern who has continually gotten better in that category as the years have gone on throughout his college career. He does need to work on his pass blocking a little bit, but I think working with DeAndre Smith and going through a full offseason in an NFL program, he's a fast learner. I think we'll see that really start to come to fruition pretty quickly. But Evan Hall, I think he's going to get more snaps than people think. I think he'll be running back 3 and possibly get around the same snaps as a Zach Moss. It'll just be in a completely different role. But I'm a huge fan of Evan Hall.
Yeah, and you got to think the receiving back they had last time was Nyheim Hines. He was like, 5'7", about $170 or so, maybe like $180. This is a guy who's, I think, at or around 6 foot tall and about 200 pounds. So this is a guy who's bigger, and he is very good out of the backfield in the passing game. And he better do well because, Andrew, in our Dynasty League, I selected Evan Hall for a reason. So I definitely think that he's going to be one of those guys that you're thinking, okay, he's going to make an impact, but Steichen's going to figure out ways to use him, I think, in a bigger sense than we might even be thinking.
And Truett's going to end us off with a pun. Hull of a player.
Oh, man.
Give a shout out to Truett as we end this show. So that's our show for this evening, guys. Really appreciate everybody coming in with the hard-hitting questions. It was a lot of fun talking about a bunch of different topics surrounding this Colts team, and we're going to really dive into all that once training camp rolls around here. Shout out to Culture Shock, Stats Matt, Patrick, Truett, Harpoon, Keon, Logan, Chad, Toby, I saw Uncouth was in the chat. The other Keon that we answered a question for earlier, Brandon, Inside the Shoe, you crying as well. We really appreciate and finally Noah Compton. Really appreciate all of you guys joining in. And if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and follow us on all the things. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Destin and Shot are going live. Content is still going to be flying out like crazy throughout the summer, especially once we get to training camp. And if you can't listen to us live or catch us on YouTube, catch us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify and Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. 5-star review, rate and review us, really helps us in those charts. Drake, I know as always you've been writing away on horseshoehuddle.com. What can the people look at? What kind of stuff do you got out there on the site?
So the last 2 that I've wrote were a reason. I actually wrote a piece a while back saying that Mo Alley Cox's time might be running out. Well, now I'm arguing why they will keep Mo Alley Cox on the team. And then the last one I did was an ESPN list had 2 Colts hitting a projections list for the top statistical categories, but one was snubbed. So there's 3 Colts that 2 got the spotlight and 1 got snubbed.
Awesome. Definitely go check out those pieces. I've got a piece coming out tomorrow, Wednesday morning, gathering all of the quotes and everything that the Colts teammates, all the Colts veterans have said so far about Anthony Richardson. It was a fun project to do, really kind of seeing what the sense is within that locker room. And so you guys will definitely want to check that out, see what all your favorite Colts are saying about I almost said AR-15, AR-5,
he was called that at one point, so you're fine.
Future franchise quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Go follow Drake at DWalster-Drake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Thursday night to talk more Colts football with you and dive into the second week of OTAs, get you all up to speed on that. So until then, have a good one. Denny Hamlin can screw it, and go Chase Elliott. We'll see you guys.